Are we still individuals, or just echoes repeating what we've heard? A question like this might sound exaggerated, but today it strikes like an open wound at the heart of modern society. In a world where people speak out of conformity, write to please an audience, and think only by repeating what they've already heard, the individual risks disappearing into the echo of mainstream opinion. Challenging all of this was a Colombian thinker, nearly unknown to the general public, yet capable of striking at the core of every modern certainty. Nicolás Gómez Dávila, a silent philosopher, allergic to the spotlight. He spent his life surrounded by books, within the walls of his personal library, crafting thousands of sharp aphorisms in a dry, aristocratic, and razor-sharp style. This video is a journey into his thought, to understand just how fragile the foundations of modern identity truly are. Dávila, born in Bogotá, Colombia, in May 1913 and died in May 1994, lived like a monk of thought. He spent most of his life in his hometown, where he died of natural causes, far from the spotlight and official intellectual circles. He didn't seek approval, much less followers. Every sentence he wrote is a blade, every idea a direct attack on our era. And yet, his criticism of modernity didn't come from resentment, but from the desire to defend the authenticity of the human being. The aphorism that best captures this tension is still unknown to many. The freedom modern man longs for is not that of the free man, but that of the slave on his day off. In just a few words, an entire worldview is revealed. Modern man doesn't really want freedom. He just wants a break from his own captivity. He wants to have fun, not be free. He wants to feel good, not question himself. His idea of freedom is the slave's Saturday night, not individual autonomy. It's hard not to see how relevant this thought still is. And in the end, one could say we're all happy slaves, smiling, content, yet always inside a cage we've stopped questioning. To fully understand this idea, we need to take a step back and look at how Dávila viewed the relationship between the individual and society. According to him, we live in an age where personal opinion has become a consumer product, and that's exactly why there are hardly any people left who actually think for themselves. He puts it plainly in one of his aphorisms: convincing someone who has their own opinions is easy, but no one convinces someone who holds borrowed ones. This sentence holds the entire modern paradox. It's far harder to change the mind of someone who doesn't really have one, because those who don't think are unreachable. They just repeat, adapt, blend into the crowd. They don't reason, don't listen, they don't live, they copy. For Dávila, most people do nothing but repeat what society tells them. It's no coincidence that he wrote, "No one clings to their opinions more fiercely than the one who is simply the echo of his time." This can be seen everywhere today, on social media, in talk shows, across digital platforms. There's constant talking, endless asserting, but very little thinking. And anyone who tries to step outside that chorus is treated like a mistake to be corrected. In his words, any individual disliked by leftist intellectuals in some way deserves to die. A harsh statement, no doubt, but it shouldn't be read as a call to action, rather as a warning. Those who don't conform are routinely excluded, silenced, erased. It's not about physical death, but cultural, social, and existential death. Uniformity has become the new standard for a person's worth. It's from this foundation that his critique of democracy also takes shape. Not a shallow or nostalgic critique, but a ruthless dismantling of the very principle on which the modern system is built. He writes bluntly, "In a democratic system, politicians are nothing more than the condensation of imbecility." But for him, The problem isn't just who governs, it's who chooses the ones who govern. When power depends on numbers instead of quality, the outcome is inevitable. It's not the wisest who wins, but the most compliant, the most mediocre, and with him, the entire system flattens out. This view doesn't come from ideological prejudice, but from a clear-eyed, disenchanted observation of reality. Dávila didn't believe in collective salvation. He didn't believe that power could ever be just. He didn't even believe equality was an absolute value. In fact, as the state grows, the individual shrinks, he wrote. More laws, more regulations, more rules, more obligations equals less freedom. Less room for conscience, for autonomy, for individuality. In a system that pushes for conformity, the authentic individual becomes a problem to solve. But there's another key point in his thinking. Dávila draws a line between the democrat and the aristocrat, not in a social sense, but a spiritual one. For him, democracy doesn't generate real love for humanity, only the illusion of empathy. He wrote, "The Democrat loves mankind only during election season," a phrase that hits with unsettling relevance. Love, solidarity, and compassion become electoral tools, masks worn just long enough to gain approval. Then they're forgotten, then put away. Only the aristocrat, according to Dávila, is capable of loving people for who they are, without ulterior motives. And his critique doesn't even spare the idea of popular rebellion. The proletariat hates the bourgeoisie only because it struggles to reach the wealth they possess. So it's not moral hatred, it's economic frustration. Not rejection, but unfulfilled desire. If given the chance, the worker would take the bourgeoisie's place, not to change it, but to enjoy its privileges. What's condemned isn't injustice itself, but the inability to benefit from it. It's a harsh view, but brutally honest. Still, what makes Dávila so relevant today is his ability to foresee, decades in advance, the fate of humanity in the media age. At a time when people think they're free just because they can speak, he shows that speaking without thinking is just another form of captivity. At a time when you can choose from 1,000 prepackaged options, he reminds us that true freedom isn't picking between A and B. It's asking whether either one is worth wanting, to live by conscience, not by script. Today, it feels like there's a race to be just like everyone else. But as we often say, the real revolution is to be yourself. Even when that means being alone, even when that means being hated, ignored, or left out. Søren Kierkegaard wrote it too. Most men don't really want freedom. They just want a leader to reassure them. The courage to think for yourself is the only way not to live as a copy of someone else. So then, how many choices in life are truly ours? And how many are just things we've absorbed without even noticing?